Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Last Dance Podcast, Episode 3, a review of Episodes 5 and 6 of The Last Dance. Again, I am John Vicari alongside Tyler Hartman and Tom Leuthner, and another two great episodes. This one dealing more with Jordan on a personal, physical, and emotional level, and we'll get right into it. It opens at Madison Square Garden, and the cool thing was highlights from that All-Star game from a different perspective. But also, Tyler, Kobe, it's great that they got him into the doc, and obviously it was pre-recorded before his passing. And Kobe, one of the quotes that stood out to me was that he said Jordan was like a big brother to him.
Yeah, that was awesome, and I thought it was funny when Jordan was calling him, Lakers boy, and he was actually talking a lot. Like, even though Kobe was young, it was almost like Jordan knew he was next up.
Yeah, I feel like he was a little emotional, obviously, for everybody to see. It's sort of still recent for a lot of people to watch Kobe Bryant and see him in live footage. But to go back and what Jordan was saying about him in the locker room, I thought was funny. How he was saying, "Oh yeah, he's just going to go force an offensive possession. He doesn't want to play defense. He just wants to go one-on-one." I think that was very funny. And then to look at him asking, Kobe asking Jordan for tips and Jordan giving it to him right away, and he was sort of like shocked. I thought that was really interesting, though.
Yeah, and I think it was just great to see the competitiveness between the guys because last All-Star game in the modern era of 2019, it was really competitive, but throughout the 2010s, it's sort of been a laughing stock and really just for the fans and what the fans wanted. But the competitiveness for the All-Star game back then, in a game that relatively means nothing. Obviously, yeah, it was the grand stage of New York City and Madison Square Garden. But win or lose, no one's legacy is going to be defined. I think an All-Star MVP is a little bit overrated when you talk about it in debates, but obviously Jordan cared about it enough, and he was the All-Star MVP. And then it goes into his stuff off the court, and it starts with his shoe deal coming out of college, which they overlooked when they went back into college in the previous episodes, but now they take time to see how he signs with Nike, which at the time was just a shoe for track stars. Obviously, Nike's origins begin in Oregon, which is one of the track capitals of the United States. And luckily, Jordan had his mom in his corner because he wasn't going to go to Converse. He wanted to stand out. He was thinking about Adidas, and he didn't want to do the interview with Nike, but his mom's like, and his mom and dad, to their credit, said, "Hey, you should give him a try." And now he has his own shoe brand, and Nike obviously profited off it as well as Air Jordan. And, when you think Nike, you think Jordan, and now Jordan's own separate brand, still under the Nike umbrella, but its own brand now.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that he said, like, you're not going to be above Magic or Larry when it comes to being in Converse. And right away, he was like, yeah, I don't even want to. And then another thing I found interesting about after, that Jordan was a thing under Nike, they brought in some interesting people to interview. I mean, Nas and Justin Timberlake, I thought were two. Grant Spike Lee, too, actually.
Yes.
I thought they were three great people to just throw into, a documentary of basketball. It really just shows that, because of Jordan, a shoe became so famous just because of how he played. And they stated that before Jordan signed with Nike, Nike was just a shoe to wear to play sports. It wasn't a shoe to hang out in. And as soon as Jordan signed with them, it was a shoe that everybody wanted to buy just to hang out in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, before that, Nike was basically, like a running shoe company. They weren't really involved in basketball, and how Jordan built them into probably the biggest basketball shoe company. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely so. Then it jumps back to 98, in which Jordan plays and really was the why they brought up the shoes in any aspect. And it was a good transition that he played with the Air Jordans versus the Knicks in the 98 season. And his sock was bloody at the end. So it was a Kurt Schilling game a couple years before. So Jordan, a bloody sock game, which I didn't know. And then it goes back to 1992, in which they defeat the Portland Trailblazers and that Jordan Shrug game. And the best part for that little thing there with Portland was he didn't want to disrespect Clyde Drexler, but he knew at that time, and still, I wouldn't say early in his career, but he only won one title at that point. He knew Clyde Drexler was nothing compared to him, which even before, I think the torch was passed at the 92 Olympics, which we'll get into. But he knew, hey, I'm better than Clyde, and I'm just going to carry this team.
Yeah. He didn't have to say anything, but it's no. He didn't want to embarrass him, but and he said it well on the documentary. He did say, and it's just the truth. He knows how good he is, how good he was.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead, JB.
No, do you have something to say with it?
Yeah. I said sorry about that for cutting out, but
No, it's
I
okay.
think that the one thing that I thought was actually really interesting was going into it. Everybody was saying that it's really going to be an insane battle because them two are the same exact player, and like I found it interesting that I didn't know the shrug was to Magic Johnson. I didn't know that at all. Everybody thinks it was just a big, oh yeah, they can't guard me, whatever. And to know that it was to Magic Johnson really caught my attention. Listening to that and understanding that now for the first time.
Was it versus Magic or was it versus Clyde?
It was versus
It was
Clyde.
versus,
Magic was in the stands.
Oh, Magic was.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
calling the game with
Yes.
NBC, I think.
Because I got confused for a second there. Yes, yeah, no,
No,
Magic
yeah.
alongside Marv. No, you were right, Tom. Then we go into what my favorite part was going into this, and that's the Dream Team, Team USA.
Mhm.
And there is a separate documentary on the Dream Team that NBA TV shows from time to time, and I think we've all seen. But just about those practices, and Jordan talks about it, they were going so competitive. And for Jordan, it wasn't just, hey, we won the finals a week ago. I'm just going to go through the motions here because we're going to win no matter what because it's the best semblance of a basketball team maybe ever. He decided, no, this is where I'm going to say, hey, I'm the best. I'm better than Magic. I'm better than Larry, even though he was hurt at that time, but Jordan was, and everyone else. And those practices, Jordan was down by 8, but he couldn't lose. And again, a game that didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but to him, it did. And he just went out there and dominated.
Yeah, I think that really, showed his competitive nature. I think another thing is that he proved that you can never get under his skin, whether you're his teammate, you're going against him, your teammates just for a little while, which Team USA was. I think that if you got under his skin, he really proved what kind of player he was. He was sort of a different player than everybody else. You could get under Magic's skin, but Magic isn't going to come back and, drop 10 straight points to lose a game for you guys. And then for them to get on the bus, this is one of my favorite things that they said is being a high school athlete playing basketball and understanding the fights, during practice and the trash talk to get on the bus and not say a word for 2 minutes. And then for everything to just be a joke, after those 2 minutes of silence, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it made me think of one of the earlier episodes when they were showing the Bulls practices, and Jordan said, I think he said, you could stack the odds against me, but I'm still going to win. And it felt like that, Magic's trash talking him. They're losing. They're down 8 or whatever it was, and it made him better as practice went on, and he just took over.
Yeah, and when they delved into the USA, obviously the Dream Team, and that was a really good point, Tom, with the bus and how they could just, be cool after what was a very competitive practice. But Jordan and Pippen were not cool with Toni Kukoc, who was a young Croatian and on what at the time was the second best team internationally, which is sort of funny now just because there's better international teams. But Croatia was the big threat to the United States back in 1992. And Pippen and Jordan told the team before, hey, we're going to shut this guy down in what was just the general round of the Olympics before the gold medal game. And they kept Toni Kukoc to 4 points. And Jordan didn't really discard him that much, but Pippen said, hey, if you come over to the NBA playing like that, you're not going to be here for long, and really staking his ground. And I don't think, which they both mentioned, not because Pippen hated Toni Kukoc, but because Jerry Krause was paying his attention to Europe and seeing what this kid can do instead of paying Scotty the money that he believed he deserved.
Yeah, I think that, again, this proves how bad of a person Jerry Krause was when it came to the Chicago Bulls. I'm not 100% sure if it was Jordan or Pippen that said it, but I think it was Jordan that said it. He said, Jerry Krause would give anything to somebody before he gives it to his own children. And, I thought that was really interesting. I believe it was Jordan that said it. And, he made a point. Everybody was saying, they were saying that Jerry Krause is so interested in this Kukoc kid that, he's going to every game and he's recruiting him so heavily and he's not paying attention to any of the players. And later on in the series, these 2 episodes, Jerry Krause actually goes on to say how, it's an organization that wins. The team's great, but it's the organization. It's the organization. It's the management. I was like, come on, man. We're going to go back to this again, like how bad of a guy he is. But I understood where Jordan was coming from. And again, I think this shows how he is the bad guy in this documentary, and it might not change.
Yeah, I felt really bad for Kukoc. He didn't do anything. and he's getting, destroyed by these guys. But it just shows, like, I guess the loyalty, the bond between Pippen and Jordan. Jordan want to back up his guy Pippen because Krause was doing I don't know, like a bad thing, whatever, by not helping out Scotty, who is winning him championships.
Yeah, and that was the thing. When they first introduced it, I was like, you know what? You can't really blame Krause for trying to get this team better. You can't be complacent. But then they bring up the part that, hey, Pippen wasn't getting the money he deserved. And at the time, the contract was coming to an end, or Pippen wanted to renegotiate. And while that's happening, you're in Croatia. It may be a positive move for the organization, but it doesn't look good to the guys that you have playing for them right now. So they came out and dominated Tony Kukoc, who then played better in the gold medal game, but the U.S. still won by 30 in what was a gold medal for Michael Jordan. And we won't go into the LeBron debate, but after they went to commercial, they said, oh, the only guy to win, I believe, was finals MVP and a gold medal. Oh, LeBron in 2012. So I thought that was just like ESPN trying to troll, I think. But I found that funny.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay away. I'm gonna stay away from that debate as much as we can. But another thing about Kukoc is, coming back to the gold medal game, it showed how determined he really was. Not to beat them, but to play better than he did the first game, obviously, and show that he's worth something. That he's not this little Croatian kid that can't play basketball because he got locked up one game. And I think that they stated in the documentary how, they didn't understand how tough he was, going through the circumstances that they were in at the time. He wasn't just this little kid that he's going to back down after a bad situation. He proved that he can come back and he can score no matter who's defending him. Maybe not win the game, but definitely score with the defender like Scotty on him.
Oh, yeah, that was impressive. The way that Team USA played against him, and the things, especially what Pippen said to him, you think that could like destroy someone's confidence, but it obviously didn't.
No, and he would obviously earn his keep on the Chicago Bulls, which we'll get to, or the documentary we'll get to in later episodes. Episode 5, though, recaps pretty much or ends with them going into politics and Jordan's famous quote that, hey, Republicans buy sneakers too, and the fact that he wasn't going to be like a Muhammad Ali and be an activist. And we won't go too deep into this because, we could have a long discussion about it, but there was prominent African-American figures in this documentary who were sort of like, hey, Mike, you could do what you want. It's your own, it's your own life. You could have your own opinions, but we would have liked if you stepped up in the 1990 Carolina governor race and just in black rights in general.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand where they're coming from. It definitely could help the election out if a player like Michael Jordan did come and stand up for a certain person in an election. But I just think that as an athlete, you're going through so much already, and watching what Michael Jordan's been through and what he's going through in the NBA, he's sort of being down. Every team's playing tough against him. When he goes up for a layup or a dunk, they're going to take him down, and his body was exhausted at that point. And if you're going to put yourself in those shoes, you're going to realize that the last thing you want to do is get yourself involved with politics or get yourself involved with the media even more, deeper down than you are, because when you're playing a game and you're getting, everything beat out of you, you're not going to want to go and start a debate for all these people to come and they can accuse him of being a racist. And, that's the last thing you want, especially when you're in that position.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, he doesn't want to alienate half of his fans by saying something either way. But it just showed how, like, intense he was or focused on basketball. He didn't even want to touch on those other things.
No, yeah, and he's a salesman. He's down the middle. And, I sort of respect that I would think, if I had to guess, if I had to assume, I would think he leans left in his political thinking, but he doesn't give any really evidence that that's what he thinks, and he's down the middle. And, again, he's not that guy. Everyone wanted him to be that guy, and I think to an extent, not to get back to LeBron, but LeBron is that guy in basketball now, along with Chris Paul and Melo to an extent. But some guys just aren't built to do that, but it's an exhausting thing. And Jordan just said, hey, I'm going to stay out, which, is his own personal thing. And he did donate to the candidate as well in that governor race, which he mentioned that people overlook. And then episode 5 wraps up with Jerry Seinfeld. So you go from politics to Jerry Seinfeld. being a fanboy in the locker room, and just Michael Jordan and Seinfeld, that's the 90s right there. That's it. That's it. And Jerry Seinfeld looking lost in the locker room. He's just like, oh, hi, Phil. Yeah, and his comedy didn't land. It was whatever. Episode 6 then starts with just the praise and the pressure that Michael Jordan has. Everyone wanted a piece of him. He's one of the most, popular people in the world at that time in the 90s, and how that begins to wear down on you. And then what was the highlight on Twitter for the Twitter audience, him with a Chicago Bulls security guard, I believe, employee. I don't know what his role was, but Jordan did allude to say, hey, go make sure the United Center's okay, all right? They were rolling quarters, and I believe the goal of the game was to roll a quarter as close to the wall as possible, and Jordan bet $20, and this employee just showed him up and took MJ's money.
Yeah, and I think obviously how you started, what episode 6 does go into about how Jordan states, people want to beat Jordan for a day or a week, or try to live in Michael Jordan's life and hate it. And I think that's going back to the same thing I was saying before. You're just getting physically beat down, and all these people want to watch a video of him gambling. And obviously it's going to got deeper into it about his gambling problems later on in the episode. But even just one video like that and one picture like that, Twitter could go insane, because half of Twitter's making it a meme right now, and the other half of Twitter is saying how Michael Jordan's such a bad guy because of the gambling situation. But I think, again, going back to what he says, is everybody wants to live the life of Michael Jordan for a day or a week, but they wouldn't be able to do it for their whole lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's so competitive. Like you said, I don't have a gambling problem. I have a competitive problem, a problem with competition. But you could tell, even in that game with the coin, he hated that he lost. And he wanted to win so bad. Even in some little thing, $20 doesn't mean anything to him, but you could tell.
The episode.
I'm not gonna lie. I think that the security guard's shoulder shrug might have been a little bit better than Michael Jordan.
Wow.
I think so too.
That guy had some swag, I'll tell you. That was a very good part, and I'm glad they put that in. It then pivots into the Jordan Rules, which was a book written, I believe, in the year 1992 into 93, and that pretty much a season recap of being along with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And there were some stories within that book casting a negative light on Michael Jordan, the fact that he punched Will Perdue, and that he just was a tough guy in the locker room. And again, this is Michael Jordan who tries to stay in the middle and, be a role model. And this book cast him in a bad light, and it took a toll on him physically, or maybe not physically, but at least mentally and emotionally. And you could tell, he didn't like that maybe other players talked about him, and he didn't like that the book was published by Sam Smith of the Chicago Tribune.
I think that, obviously the practice videos, they're saying it was a lot about him in practice, and he was a terrible teammate in practice, and he threatened, if you pass him the ball in a late situation, I won't give you the ball anymore. And it's funny because if you watch videos back from the Lakers practices in 2010, 11, Kobe Bryant does the same thing. And I think that at that time, just about every player in the NBA had their bad reputation. Pat Ewing had his bad reputation. John Starks and the Knicks had their bad reputation because of how the NBA was at that time. And at that point, Michael Jordan didn't have that bad reputation that the other players had. And I think that somebody wanted to go out and make him have a negative reputation that everybody else had. Scottie had the negative reputation for his contract because of how he went about it. The Knicks had their bad reputation. The Pistons had their bad reputation. Rodman had his bad reputation with the Pistons, and I think at that point it's okay. Well, now we need to give Jordan a bad name because everybody else has one right now.
Yeah, I think if you try to write a book, about like looking for bad things about a person, you're gonna find them, even if it's someone who seemed like they were like, I guess, perfect at the time, like Jordan, and they obviously weren't like anything like against the law or anything like that, but from how perfect he was, even things like that, I guess, cast him in a negative light.
Around that time, Jordan couldn't really escape negativity as the doc goes into the 1993 playoffs. They go into the East Finals, and it's what we've been waiting for New York in a while. A great New York Knicks team, Chicago Bulls, Marv Albert, NBC. It was beautiful just to watch and to, live, because we really didn't, because we weren't born. But it goes into after or before game one, I should say, the Chicago Bulls lose, and it was rumored that MJ was in Atlantic City, so MJ in AC, gambling to about 2:30. He says in an interview in Modern Day that it was to about 12:31. Relax. I was just trying to escape New York, but obviously it put a light and maybe not pressure, but definitely a distraction in front of the Chicago Bulls and on Michael Jordan after being down 1-0 to a team that they alluded the Knicks were trying to be the next bad boy Pistons, and how the Bulls took from the Pistons their greatness. The Knicks were trying to do the same and knock off the defending world champions.
And you know, JV, like going back to I told you this before we started, Tyler, you weren't even here yet. You know, at that point, you're doing so much for the Bulls. You know, everybody was saying that, you know, Jordan was able to change the game in a heartbeat. If Jordan wants to win the game, Jordan's going to win the game. And he has so much pressure on himself being the best player on that team. And, you know, again, his body was getting worn down. And this is going back to what I said before. He had so much pressure on him, and his body was not having a great time physically. And I think that, you know, you do need to get away here and there. And obviously going out to gamble might not be the best route to go. But he said, you know, it's a hobby. I like to win. You know, like Tyler said before, he had that competitive nature, and they said he wasn't gonna lose and he wasn't gonna just win. He wants to put his foot down your throat. You know, Magic said he wants to put his foot down your throat and win. And I mean, again, I'm not gonna say I understand the point of gambling, but I understand the point of wanting to get away with your dad for a little bit, especially when there's that much pressure on you. And I think that, of course, the media took it out of hand going further in, you know, the next couple minutes of the episode of just constantly asking, oh, well, do you have a gambling problem? Do you have a gambling problem? You know, he did. He silenced from the media, and I respect the decision that he did, because if I was an athlete in that day, I would do the same thing.
Yeah, to me, it was just impressive that he could do that and still, you know, play at the same level. And it's not like, again, like he was doing anything illegal or anything, you know, that's not allowed, you know, for people to do. But, and I'm sure he still got like a full night's rest. They obviously lost the first two games, which is why he got so much criticism. But in the end, they won, and, you know, he proved that it wasn't affecting him too much.
Yep, and though it might not have been illegal, the pressure and the criticism, like you mentioned, Tyler, was still on him. Bulls take a 2-0 lead, or Knicks, take a 2-0 lead. The Bulls tie it back up, and then in a decisive game 5 misses by the Knicks down the stretch. Just disgraceful. And it's funny, there'll be a Post article tomorrow, because the back cover of the New York Post for tomorrow, if you're watching this on time, for Monday, May 4th, is, hey, Charles Oakley blaming Patrick Ewing. It's not on Smith that we didn't make it to the finals in 93. Ewing was the reason we never got gold. So very interesting. And Charles Oakley was featured a bit in this documentary, but that's besides the point. So Chicago moves on, defeat the Knicks in 1993, and then they match up against league MVP Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns. And again, Charles and Phoenix taking it to Jordan, not letting them get away with it too easy. The series goes all the way to 6 games. But in that game 5, it was going to be a coronation for Michael Jordan, who in this series averaged 40 points per game. But a coronation for the team. Chicago is ready to celebrate the three-peat, and the Phoenix Suns didn't let them do that. They go to game 6, and what was great, Jordan says, I'm only going to pack one suit, guys. We're winning this game. We're winning game 6. And Jordan went into Jordan mode, where Barkley said that he played his best, but it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, you know, and I found that, again, really interesting. I think I said this about the first 2 episodes. You know, Jordan, or maybe the second 2, Jordan proved he's a leader to that team. You know, he proved that he has that switch that he could just turn on, but it was more of being a leader off the court. You know, originally I was saying that he's a leader because he brought the entire team in the weight room after the Bad Boy Pistons, and even this, he sits down with his entire team and says, listen, I'm bringing one suit. We're not going back there for 2 games. Like, I don't care what you guys are doing. And, you know, I think that they knew that he was going to get the ball. The Phoenix Suns knew that he was going to get the ball in the last couple seconds of the game, or for John Paxson to hit that shot. You know, I thought it was hysterical, because John Paxson got a little emotional in the interview, and he's like, you know, for me, that was a big moment. And in my mind, I was just sitting there laughing a little bit, because I was like, I think for anybody, it would be a big moment too. And, you know, just for John Paxson had the only 3 points in the 4th quarter on the Bulls besides Michael Jordan, I thought that was just phenomenal. The fact that Jordan had every point in the 4th quarter except for that 3.
It could have been Judd.
It could have been Judd, man.
I love that play. I love watching Barkley play. I think he's maybe one of the most underrated players ever. I don't have his stats from that NBA Finals up right now, but I think he averaged like like 27, 13, and 5 or something for the series. And I'm not gonna like go into all his stats, but definitely underrated. He also won the MVP that year. I think, you know, if he had at least one championship, you know, maybe people would think about him differently.
Yeah, and he went on SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt right after the documentary and talked a little. But I think you're right in terms of the stats. Definitely 27 points. I think the rebounds were up there as well. Barkley, again, played his best, but it just wasn't enough to beat Michael Jordan and the Bulls. At the end of 93, after a three-peat for the Bulls, Jordan sort of believed it was relief. It wasn't the celebration of the first two championships. It was a relief that he got through the season and all the drama surrounding the gambling. And then it goes to 98, and he's in the car with Ahmad Rashad of NBC Sports, this in the 1998 season, and wanting to maybe step away. And that was his belief in 93 and in 98, which were both the third seasons of trying to get a three-peat. And he just was tired emotionally, physically in both, and sort of alluding to, hey, he wouldn't come back for 94. He'd go play baseball, and then 98 would be his last year with the Bulls. So it's sort of interesting to see that after, you know, going through this three-peat, it took a lot on him and how he was going to step away both times, but they didn't go into it because that will obviously be the next episode. So my question, we end the podcast usually like this: your top moment, worst moment, best guy, worst guy, however you want to phrase it, just something you took away from both episode 5 and episode 6. Tom, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I think I'm going to go with my top moment being what we just said with the John Paxson 3. Just because I still think it's phenomenal that that was the only 3-point scored, and the fact that he got all emotional. He's like, oh, it was one of the biggest moments for me. I think my worst moment was obviously, I feel that the last entire episode was trying to focus on Jordan being a bad guy for gambling. And, you know, again, with the amount of media, like you can't focus on somebody being a bad guy for doing something that they enjoy doing. Again, like what Tyler said, he wasn't doing anything illegal. You know, he wasn't doing anything bad. He proved that he was still able to win an NBA Finals, the biggest team to the championship. I think I'm going to go with my bad guy is Jerry Krause. Again, just because of what I said before the quote, he got very, very, you know, sort of hard-headed. It was it's not the team that wins, it's the organization. And he just kept saying it, and he repeated it about 6 times. And in my head, I'm just thinking, like, this guy's an ass, man, you know? And my good guy, I'm going to go with, let's change it up. I think I'm going to go with Larry. You know, just because I think Larry in general is a great guy. In the episodes, it was just, he had a lot of funny comments. He had a very, you know, bad sense of humor when he was the coach of the East All-Stars. It was a very bad, his comment was literally, all right, we're here, might as well win, right? And I just thought that was funny because he had no sense of humor whatsoever. But swing it over to you, Tyler.
All right, I don't have a good guy and bad guy, but I have a couple of moments. So I like the bad moment was Kukoc in the Olympics. You know, just like feeling bad for him, and like even hearing him talk now, he kind of sounded like really upset about it still, like because you know he was just a kid. And then the good moment or like a cool thing that I like seeing was, this is kind of throughout the whole documentary, but definitely this episode, like Jordan playing in the retro Jordans, which is something like you don't see now. Like those shoes now, you know, aren't worn for in basketball games on the court. And now obviously, you know, you saw like his feet were bleeding. They're not really meant to be played in, but back then he did play in them, and it's cool seeing him wear them on the court.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because Tony Kukoc sort of looked like your uncle, or, you know, just a regular dude. When they shot, you know, they put the camera on him, I wasn't like, wow, he looks like an NBA player. But my top guy is, top action, best moment, whatever you want to phrase it, is MJ saying, you know what, screw Reebok. They made these U.S. uniforms. I'm a Nike guy. I'm Jordan. I'm gonna cover it. I'm a bad guy sort of for doing it because you should be representing your country. But no, I'm gonna do it by putting an American flag over. So if Reebok says something about it, they look unpatriotic. That's a genius move by Michael Jordan. I don't know. They didn't go into specifics who made that decision. I think it was just Michael. Maybe his agent had something to do with it. It was a savage move, and I just appreciate Michael Jordan pettiness at its finest. And the worst moment, and maybe I'll get some flack for this, is Spike Lee. Look, Spike Lee's this pronounced Nick guy arguing with Jordan in 93, this and that. He helped build Jordan up in the 80s when he was still a Knicks fan, And I understand that, Ewing wasn't the popular guy like Michael Jordan. He didn't have the shoe brand. But how about throw Ewing a little spotlight in your movie instead of Jordan? You're a Knick dude, man. I mean, come on. I know, I guess Spike's just trying to, build the game of basketball at that time, but you're a Knick dude. You're a New Yorker.
Yeah, I think that's just a business thing, like kind of how Jordan said, Republicans buy sneakers too. It was just a business move, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to disagree with Tyler and just say that the Knicks have a terrible fan base.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
actually, I have to go back one more time. I think my least favorite moment was the first time that we've seen the Denver Nuggets in this series, and it was Michael Jordan closing his eyes and hitting a free throw. So I think that might have been my least favorite moment in this series so far.
Very nice. Well, he knew that Denver was never competition, like they aren't now.
Yeah, they got a lot of airtime in this series.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so that wraps it up for the Last Dance Podcast, Episode 3. If you found it, you're on the Last Dance Podcast YouTube page. Come back for Episode 4, which will be right after the documentary, the Monday following it, right here on YouTube on the Last Dance Podcast. For Tyler Hartman and Tom Leuthner, I'm John Vicari. Thanks for watching.